it easy now, boy.
This time we'll get...
Don't get nervous.
What?
Hey! Listen, it just occurred to me we missed football practice today.
How about a little line practice?
Yeah,
right there through that picture.
Hey! Hey! Hey, bullseye!
Pretty good.
Timber!
There we go.
Code 3.
My name is Barrett, Assistant Sheriff, Los Angeles County. A nationally known judge recently wrote, "Society's problem is not juvenile delinquents, but the juvenile's problem is a delinquent society." The disturbing case of Dewey Cushman and his two teenage friends spotlights this condition, while showing how our Crime Prevention Bureau combats it down where it does the most good, at the grassroots. Later that day, a gardener, coming to weed a neighboring cottage, saw what was left of the Boardman house and reported it to the nearest sheriff's office. A patrol car was immediately dispatched to the scene. The uniformed deputies arrived, made a quick examination of the premises, and reported the situation to Sergeants Coombs and Nelson.
Uh-huh. Thank you very much. We'll check into it. We got a call.
Aside from the wreckage, they found little enough to go on. Some tire marks and what looked like auto paint on a piece of furniture which had been hurled through the window. So, with what evidence they had, plus a strong suspicion this had been the act of juveniles, they notified the crime lab and requested their services. The next morning, they searched an area of 4 square blocks around the nearby school until they found a car whose tires matched the plaster cast. Then, getting the name of the registered owner, Mark Cushman, Dewey's father, they went into the school and had a talk with the principal. An hour later, they were all back at Sergeant Coombs' office.
Mm-hmm. That's all you have to say about it? Seemed like fun at the time?
Well, look, it sounds kind of crazy, I guess, but that's all there was to it. The ashtray got busted. Well, it just happened, that's all.
Sort of a chain reaction of wanton destruction, hmm? Sergeant Coombs. Well, yes, Mr. Cushman. That's right, sir, as soon as you can. I'm sorry, I'm afraid this can't wait, sir. In fact, this is a little more your business than the bank. The sooner the better. We'll be as fast as we can, sir. Thank you. Now, Dewey, just why did you break into Mr. Boardman's house in the first place?
I got fired off the football team. I was teed off. I got Pat and Alan, and oh, what's the use? You wouldn't understand. Nobody would.
I try to, Dewey. That's my job.
Sergeant, what do you think's going to happen to us?
Well, it's hard to say, Fargo. A lot of it'll depend on your father's.
That's a real laugh.
Yeah, like a lead bomb.
Well, they're all here, Doug, except Mr. Cushman.
Hell, he's on his way. Stay with the boys, will you?
Sure.
Sergeant Coombs?
Yes, sir.
I'm Fargo, Alan's father.
How do you do, sir? You're Mr. Fitzgerald?
That's right. Isn't Cushman coming?
I believe he's on his... Oh. Mr. Cushman?
You Coombs?
Yes, sir. Glad you can make it down here.
Can I see Dewey now? Have you got him locked up?
The boys aren't even arrested so far. This is Mr. Fargo, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Sergeant, I know Alan. He's not destructive. If he had anything to do with this vandalism, I want you to know he was forced into it.
Now, just a minute.
Gentlemen, won't you please sit down? Now, it's not a question of why they did it or even if they did it. The boys admit very freely that they did. I asked you to come down here to help us nail down the actual responsibility.
Then why waste time? They're all minors, and we're responsible for the damage. Now, how much will it cost?
There's more than money involved here, Mr. Cushman. It's your moral responsibility that such a thing could happen.
Our responsibility?
Yes, sir.
What about the school's responsibility? If they kept an eye on them, the boys couldn't have left school to go up the ridge.
Well, I'm not excusing it, of course. But being born and brought up in the toughest part of Detroit, I figure, well, it's kind of natural for boys to act like boys.
Now, what burns me up is having done it, being stupid enough to get caught. Maybe that's why Dewey's only a third string back.
Gentlemen, you're all either avoiding the point or possibly missing it. The responsibility lies in the homes from which these boys come.
Sergeant, it's not that I'm disinterested. I just don't have time to debate this with you. I've got to get back to the bank. Now, if it's all right with the others, I'm perfectly willing to pay my share of repairing the house and putting it back in shape. Is that fair enough?
It's okay with me.
All right, here's
Writing
my
checks
third.
isn't going to be much of a punishment for your boys.
You know, he's right. And they're too big to be spanked. But I have an idea, Sergeant.
Yes?
Now, you take my Pat. He's pretty handy with tools. Why can't you make the boys go up there and rebuild the place themselves?
Hey, that's the ticket. That'll teach them a lesson.
We'll teach you mental lesson.
You think you can punish us for what our kids did? They're full grown, you know.
Mr. Fargo, I'm trying to help stop anything like this from happening again. Now, from what little I've gathered from your boys themselves, I feel perfectly safe in saying that if you'd spent a little more time with them in the past, what happened yesterday never could have happened.
Sergeant, I'm willing to pay my share. You can take it or leave it.
I see. Then you'd prefer to have Dewey brought before a juvenile court, is that it?
Court?
Yes.
Why, I thought that part had all been settled.
It all can be settled, sir, if you gentlemen will agree to a little suggestion that I have to make. Now, I think you ought to go out and hire yourselves a competent carpenter to supervise, and all three of you go out there with your kids and rebuild that house.
Do you mean take time off from business?
Late afternoon, after schools, weekends. Gentlemen, I can promise you one thing. I think you'll find you'll be in mighty fine company.
Well, suppose we go along with your idea, Coombs. We're all amateurs. How do we know Boardman will go along or be satisfied with what we do?
Why not ask Mr. Boardman himself?
Sergeant Coombs phoned me and told me what he had in mind.
And you'd settle just for that? Doing it ourselves?
On the physical repairs, yes. On the furniture and carpets and things like that, I imagine you'd want to replace them.
Sure, sure.
Naturally. But Mr. Boardman, if you don't mind my saying so, you're being very lenient. Is it all right if I ask you why?
Well, let's say I'm paying a little penance of my own. I had a kid. I guess he'd be alive today if I'd tried to get a little closer to him.
Well, gentlemen?
Mr. Boardman, Sergeant, you just made yourselves a deal. Maybe we'd better shake hands on it before I bang up all 10 of my thumbs.
Alan, you got a minute?
Sure, Pop. What is it?
You sure this is the right screen for this window?
I hate sounding like a father, Pop, but if you can't do the job, you gotta face up to it like a man and admit it.
Well, I hate to sound like a son, but if you'll do this for me, just this once, I'll mow the lawn for a week.
Well,
How many times must I tell you? Start your cut with short strokes.
I know that, Dad, but the saw must be dull. It needs sharpening or something.
More excuses. Well, before you ruin that, come over here, will you, and lend me a hand.
Yes, sir.
I'm only doing this to help you learn a little responsibility.
Yeah?
See how easy?
Can't you hold it straight for me for 10 seconds?
Well, I'm trying to, Dad, but you keep twisting it.
Do you always have to make excuses for... Oh, my mistake. I see I can be wrong, too, occasionally.
That's all right, Dad. Maybe if we tried it like this.
That's fine. All right, just hold her steady like that, and we'll be through in no time.
Oh, hi, Sergeant.
Hi, Dewey.
Everything look okay to you?
Yeah, couldn't be better. Fargo tells me you ought to be through by tomorrow night.
Maybe the other guys will be through tomorrow night, but my dad and myself will be through tonight. Oh, he's a whiz with tools, the greatest.
That's fine. Say, Dewey, I didn't notice your car out front as I drove up just now.
Well, I drove out with Pat today.
You got your car, haven't you?
Oh, sure, you bet. It's home, in the garage.
Garage is locked, huh?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna get the car back as soon as school closes.
That's about 6 months, Dewey.
I know, but, well, after what I did, I guess I deserve it.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Well, don't let me keep you from finishing.
I suppose you realize what you've done this time. Because if what you want is to have our son turn against you, you've certainly succeeded.
What do you mean, Millie? I've always given the boy everything he ever wanted.
Yes, everything. Except understanding, confidence.
Confidence in what, may I ask? His grades at school, his brilliant record as a third-string football player?
He does what he can, and if that isn't good enough for you, have you ever tried to show him how to do better? Have you done one thing except tear down his confidence by your constant criticizing?
I suppose you think he'll improve if we stop criticizing him and just leave him alone?
I don't know what it is with you, Mark. Everyone can't be top dog in everything, you know. Not even you.
Millie, suppose we just concentrate on Dewey, and I'll be very happy to debate this thing with you formally whenever he's first in anything. Football, Spanish, algebra, even the hopscotch team, if they ever have one. Excuse me. Oh, and another thing. I'm through throwing good money after bad. Until Dewey learns what it means to succeed, there'll be no college. At least not at my expense. There's a letter here for you from the sheriff's office. What'd you get mixed up in this time?
Nothing, Dad, honest. Hey, this is fabulous.
What's fabulous, Dewey?
Well, if I want to organize a car club, you know what? The sheriff will send out a sergeant who does nothing but help kids who have cars.
Well, stop getting so excited about it. I'm certainly not going to let you organize a club to help kill yourself.
Mark, you're being perfectly ridiculous. Dewey, if you feel you want to find out about forming this club, you go right ahead.
What? Well, that's plain idiocy.
Well, then suppose you go on down to the bank and let a couple of idiots settle it. Well, Dewey?
I don't know, Mom. I don't want you and Dad worrying about me, but a car club of our own. Well, that's really cool.
Well, then answer the letter. After driving with your father last Sunday, I think it's a good idea I have one man in the family that knows something about cars.
Thanks, Mom. But, Mom, I don't have a car. I won't have for another 6 months.
Don't worry.
What are you trying to do, Lieutenant? Make me more of a villain than I am?
What have I done now, Mr. Cushman?
That letter to Dewey about the car club, you sent it to him, didn't you?
Yes, I turned in his name as a likely prospect. Won't you sit down?
No, thanks. Well, couldn't you wait 6 months?
Well, why 6 months?
That's when he gets his car back.
It's a long time to a boy, Mr. Cushman.
That's the length of time you'd have had in juvenile hall.
Yes, but it's still a long time to a boy, and he's not in juvenile hall. He's going to school every day, seeing the other boys with their cars and their dates. You're a banker, Mr. Cushman. You like statistics. I could give you some pretty painful ones about boys just like Dewey.
Well, it's only 6 months.
You and me, that's nothing. To Dewey, it can be an eternity.
A few nights later, Sergeant Bob Nelson met with Dewey and his group and told them how to organize a club and what they might do with it once they had it organized. He distributed a sample club constitution
discussed the real purposes of a car club, gave them literature on the lawful operation of cars, stressing safety. And then he told them his big news.
Now look, fellas, here's the real gassing. The sheriff's office is holding a competition for the most skillful drivers. Now, there are going to be 10 winners. One of them's going to come from this area. But all of the winners go to Indianapolis, a free trip to see the Memorial Day 500. How about that?
Oh, that's the big race. Yeah. What's the gimmick?
No, there's no gimmick. You don't have to sign any pledges. You don't have to give a thing up. Any one of you can compete in your neighborhood competition, providing you haven't had a traffic citation for a moving violation in the past 6 months.
Easy enough. Except for you.
Okay, if you're interested, I'll be back a week from tonight. Give you all the final information and pick up your applications. Now, in the meantime, you set up a constitution, elect a few officers, you know, do some bench racing. Okay?
Okay.
Fine, don't race your motors.
Good night, Sergeant.
Right.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Hey. Gee, you know, that sounds pretty interesting, doesn't it?
Dewey, what are you doing still up?
Typing the minutes of the first meeting of the Cobras.
Well, so you organized your club, huh?
Oh, yes, sir. And is that Sergeant Nelson something? He gave us a constitution, told us how to do it. We've even elected officers already.
How does it feel to be president of the Cobras?
Well, I'm not the president, Dad. Pat is. But I'm the recording secretary, and it's a real tough job. I've got to write letters to other clubs and get publicity. And...
Yes, I understand. Congratulations. Well, it's past midnight, son. That typing can wait till tomorrow.
Yes, dear. I'll have to call you 5 times for breakfast if you stay up any later.
Good night, Dad.
Night, son.
I'll be right up, Mom.
Night, dear. Mark, when are you ever going to learn?
When's he ever going to learn? His own house, and he can't be elected president.
Hi, Dewey.
Oh, hiya, Sergeant. Would you flip the switch, please?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. You know, you're just the man I wanted to see. I want to ask you a few questions about this engine.
Yeah, well, look, let's hold that till later, huh? I got a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Oh, sure, shoot.
I got your club's applications for the Indianapolis Derby. Where was yours?
I'm not entering.
Why not? You're a good driver.
Thanks, Sergeant, but maybe next year, huh?
Did your parents tell you not to enter?
Heck no.
Well, then.
Look, Sergeant, what's the use of entering and not winning, huh?
Well, you can't win until you enter.
Yeah, I know, but... Well, let's just say it's a personal matter, okay?
Sure. Sure, I was just wondering. Well, what is it you want to ask me about this?
Oh, well, listen. Suppose I yank this cam out of here and I put in a 3/4 cam, huh? And then...
You may think I'm guessing, but believe me, Mr. Cushman, I've had enough experience with boys that I'm a mighty qualified expert.
And you really think he's not entering your safety competition because I've tried to teach him to win, no matter what he goes into?
Well,
That's a pretty broad statement, Mr. Cushman, but since it's in your own words, let me put it this way. How would you feel if the tables were turned?
Well, I really don't know. You see, I've always played to win.
Yes, but did you have somebody riding your back telling you that you had to get out in front?
Nobody ever rode me but me. You see, I didn't have the sheriff's department pulling invisible strings behind my back.
Mr. Cushman, did you ever hear the old saying, you can catch more flies with 1 drop of honey than you can with a barrel of vinegar?
Yes, I remember it, but how does that apply here?
You've been pretty rough on Dewey. Now, talk to him. See that he enters this derby tomorrow, and above all, make certain that he believes that all you want him to do is to do his best.
Sergeant, what you ought to do is run for office. You've gotten me to shake your hand more often than a candidate for president. Sergeant, excuse me.
The Indianapolis Derby, run in 12 different areas, each with a single winner, is a far cry from the drag races so familiar to all of us. But primarily, the Derby is a competition against time, in which accuracy, skill, and a sure sense of driving safety combine to reward the individual winners. 5 events in which each contestant, driving the same new car for the very first time, attempts to tool the car through the obstacles in the shortest period of time. However, every error in judgment, every pylon hit is charged against the teenage driver's final score by adding 1/10 of a second for each infraction. Dewey Cushman, buoyed up by his father's newfound confidence in him, ran up a low score which was just about unbeatable.
Hey, nice going, Dewey. I sure got something to shoot at.
Good boy. How'd I do that, huh?
Great, Dewey. Nobody can beat 64 and 5/10 seconds.
Well, I hope not. But Pat's last, and if anybody can knock me off, he's the one who can do it.
I just dare him to. If he does, I'll report him to the sheriff's office.
Pat Fitzgerald. Pat Fitzgerald. Come on, Pat. You're the last one up. Shake a leg.
Well, so far, I'm 2/10 of a second ahead of him.
We're still all right.
Hi. Pat and Dewey are awful close.
See that?
Oh.
They're running about neck and neck.
Right.
I think Pat took it, Dad.
Don't be silly. The way I scored, you're still 3/10 ahead.
Well, that's great, but your score doesn't count. Come on.
Hey, nice going.
Oh, thanks a lot, Pat. You were good, too. Real good.
All right, fellas, your attention, please. Here it is. Here are the results. The best time for the day, Dewey Cushman. But the winner with the best total score for all events, and the man from this area who gets the trip to Indianapolis, Pat Fitzgerald.
Wonderful, Pat. Congratulations, Pat. At least we kept it in the club, huh?
Sure did, Dewey.
Both.
Boys, you all did very well.
Put on a great show, son. In fact, you did so well, I'm going to take you to Indianapolis myself.
Thanks, Dad, but I wouldn't feel right going after I lost. Maybe next year I'll win if I try harder. Like Sergeant Coombs says, there's always a second chance.
Maybe Dewey will win next year, but we think both Cushmans won something. When Dewey's father learned that you don't have to win to be a winner. This is why Sheriff Biscaloose wrote in the letter Dewey received, "I realize the great potential for good that exists in well-organized youth activities in training young people to face the problems they face later as adults." And now may I present the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Eugene W. Biscaloose.
Friends, the members of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department are pleased to cooperate in the production of Code 3 in the interest of crime prevention and rehabilitation. We hope you'll join us again next week for another true case from our files. I thank you very much.